Okay, now I don't know if this is going to work or not because I've never tried to do a video of my desktop, but I often get asked, how do I make my Instagram pictures look so perfect? Why do my guns look like they've never been fired? Well, today I want to show you why they look like they've never been fired. It's actually a trick. I use Photoshop, or actually I use GIMP. And I want to do a little tutorial here. I'm not going to show you too much, but I'm just going to give you a general overall view of what I do to my pictures to make them look like the guns are brand new. Now, the first thing I do is, of course, I start off with a picture I took. I just took this in the backyard. It is my Smith & Wesson 637 Performance Center sitting on the rail of my fence. And I've always found that wood, things like that, make great backgrounds. And you also want to be in an area where the sun isn't too intense, because I don't like dark shadows in pictures. If I see a dark shadow in a picture, I just don't care for it. So I like to use diffused lighting. I like to either go into the shade. This is actually in the shade with a little bit of light coming through some tree branches for a little bit of dramatic effect. Often I'll wait till it's cloudy outside and I'll go out when it's overcast. Overcast skies are nature's diffused lighting, so it's like the perfect way to take a picture. And then you also got to consider your background. I like things like wood, stone, rocks, tree branches, etc. Anything that's natural, because guns are very unnatural. They're a very man-made item. So I like the background to be a nice natural background, something like a wood grain, etc. And as you can see here, it's a fence, so it's a nice weathered wood grain. But getting back to how I make the guns look so good, well, I'm going to show you here. Now, this gun, I've already done probably 90% of what I'm going to do to it. I took off some dirty areas up here in front of the cylinder. I cleaned up around this edge right here, etc. But I'm going to show you a little bit of what I do, just the overall actions themselves, and you'll get an idea of how I make the guns look the way they do in the pictures. Now, the first thing you do is you just start zooming in on the gun. You find an area of the gun, you start zooming in on it, and you'll start to see spots that will appear, bad areas. Like right here, there's a little dark spot. Right here, there's a little light spot. Now, these are two of the most common things you're going to face: dust specks, dirt specks, etc. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the little light spots like this one are actually worse than the dark spots like this one, because when you go to colorize or increase your contrast, etc., these little white spots look horrible. So it's more important to get these off than it is these. These look like a little dirt. These look like a defect in the picture. So once I decide which spot I'm going to fix first, I'll just zoom in on it closer. And what I'll usually do is I'll just take a paintbrush over here. I'll go over select my paintbrush. Now, a lot of times I'll use the airbrush, but since this is a tiny spot, I'll use a paintbrush. And make sure I've got it down to a very small size. You don't want to delete more pixels than you have to. You'll end up with flat spots in your picture, and your picture won't look good at all. So what I do is I just go right next to the spot I'm going to fix, and then select some color from the area right next to it, and then just brush it out. And it's that easy. And then you go over here, like here's a spot, select the color right next to it, brush it out. Same thing down here, there's a bad spot. Brush it out. And right here, there's a little dark spot on this edge. Just select the darker color. Boom, it's gone. Up here's that white spot. Just select right next to it. Same process. Now right here, you can see this little area right here. That's a little bit too big to use the paintbrush. It's going to be a lot of work to fill it back in. So I'll go to the airbrush. I'll increase my pixels up to about, 8. Select the color next to it, and then airbrush that out. As you can see, it gives you a more feathered, patterned look. Just keep going over it very lightly until you get it to where it's not going to show in the overall picture when you enlarge the picture. And you can use the airbrush anywhere you want to use it, like in these areas right here. It does help even out areas that are really bad. Now, one thing you got to be careful when you're using the airbrush, and I'll show you here for an example. If I try to get rid of that, where that light spot there is right next to that dark, when I get rid of it, I'm also degrading my line right there. So you don't want to do that. Well, in cases like that, you want to definitely use the paintbrush. And see, even then where I used it too big, it kind of overlaid that line. So that'll be a light spot on that line. So make sure you're down to, like I said before, as few pixels as possible, and just fill it in. And you can also do the dark too to fill it back in, and just kind of work your way back and forth until you get the line back to the way you want it. And I don't just fix like spots. I fix areas that just don't look right. Like right here, there's a little area right there. So I will select my brush and kind of get rid of that double line right there. Just boom. And make sure you blend your colors. Just keep selecting one color than the other. Blend your colors together a little bit. You'll end up with an overall better effect. And I can also increase this line just a little bit. Make this line a little more, solid and consistent. See how it's dark right there, but then it kind of fades out there and it gets dark again. I'll just use my brush, put the line in all the way back, and then kind of feather it back down a little bit. And then I got the dark line all the way through. That looks a lot better when you zoom away from it in the final picture. And right down here on the crane, there's a dirty area here. That's where it's got a lot of goop on it from where it's been fired. I just will airbrush that out. Like I say, increase the airbrush to like an 8 or a 10, and just start working. And remember, just don't do too much. It's the thing. If you do too much, just delete what you did and start again, because it's hard to put stuff back. It's easy to take stuff out. It's hard to put it back. And then when I zoom out from that, just a little bit airbrushing, you can see I can get an idea of what it's starting to look like. It's looking cleaner, but I've still got like a dark spot here and a light area there, so I want to finish filling that in. And that should have it. Yeah, see there, it looks good now. Now you do want to leave enough texture that you can still tell this is metal. Like I said, you don't want to be taking out everything and it just look like a big flat blob of color. Still leave your texture in there. That's why you want to work as small as possible. Another trick you want to remember is when you are airbrushing and stuff, the natural line of this picture is going this way. So when I airbrush, I want to move that way. That way it looks like I'm staying with the natural lines of the picture. It doesn't stand out as much. Okay, now another thing I will sometimes do is fix finishes that don't even need to be fixed. They shouldn't be fixed. Like we know these triggers are a parkerized finish, so it should be a little uneven. But it doesn't look good uneven in a picture. So I'll go ahead and kind of brush it out to make it a little more even though it's not supposed to be. And it still makes the picture look better overall in the end. So I'll just select my airbrush here, choose the darker of the colors, push my numbers up here a little bit to 15 because I'm filling in a pretty big area here, and then just start lightly airbrushing this in to try to even out the color. Okay, now once I've sometimes brushed in a finish like this, what I'll do is I'll select the area, because it does get a little flat looking when you do that. I'll select all the area, then I'll use one of my filters to add some noise. Noise adds little dots. So I'll select it. See, it'll show me over here that's going to add some noise. I'll add that noise, and then I'll just blur it a little bit. And there, it looks like it's got more texture to the finish again. And that trigger is going to look better when I zoom away from it. And down here's a little sharp area. I want to get rid of that. Those little sharp areas look really bad in pictures. So just a little airbrush over it, boom. See, it softens it right up. Now sometimes I like to even take out extraneous background stuff like this little red spot of a leaf right here. So there's two ways I can do this. I can try to brush it out and do it with the brush and get it lined here. Like I'll just do it this way. I can just kind of, oops, that's a little big. That's why I say you got to take these down to the smaller number. I can just start doing lines through it like this. Just one line after another until it's filled in. Kind of even, I can blend it in with a little blending tool if I want to. And that's one way to do it right there. And then when I get it in, I just take my little blending tool here and just kind of rub over it. Like I said, keep working in the lines. There's obviously a definite grain here, so work with that. And get rid of the color. See how there's still some color there. I got to keep airbrushing over that or lining over it until I get rid of all that color, because that color will stand out when you pump up the colors of the picture later. Okay, now there's another way I could do that also. Let's find another little spot here and we'll take one out. Let's take out this piece. That's a big piece. Brushing it's going to take a lot of work. So one thing I can do is I can go right next to it, select, about a size of the background that's going to be about the same size as it, copy it, paste it, and then move it over the item, and then blend that in. And you can paste it more than once if you got more area here you want to cover. So then you can see that leaves me a lot less that I need to blend in now. Just take my airbrush, blend it in. And I can always go back in, add a little noise here, and blend it back in if I want to. But I don't think I'm going to need to. I think that looks fine. Once I zoom away, that's not going to be that noticeable. And while I'm down here, I'll see some more little spots on my barrel here that I will airbrush out. Like this little spot right here I'm working on, that's actually a natural part of the rifling of the barrel, but in a picture it still looks bad even though it's supposed to be there, so get rid of it. Just don't go too far. Some people get crazy when they airbrush. That's why you see pictures of models that don't have belly buttons or missing a finger, because someone went a little crazy with the airbrushing and didn't take the overall picture into account. And pay close attention to things like seams. Like you can see how the seam right here has got a lot of grit in it. Makes it look dirty when you do the overall picture. So that's one of the things you want to get rid of, and it's best to get rid of those high spots. See those high spots there? Once those are gone, it won't look like there's grit in the seam anymore. You would think that putting the dark color back in would make the seam look dirtier, but it actually makes it look a lot better. Now you do want to get out the really dark spots like those right there, and this one up here. But as you can see, overall, that seam looks a lot better now, having just darkened it up and taken out the high and low spots. And when I zoom away from it here, you don't see as much grit. Now you can still see a little dark right there, so I got to go back in and lighten that up, and then I'll be done with this area. There, it's looking a lot better now. Now I'll just work my way over the whole gun, like getting rid of some of these dark spots. There's some more light spots down here on the trigger. I'll get rid of those on the trigger guard. But not a whole lot more to do. I'll get this done, then I'll show you the overall picture at the end. All right, here's one more example of where there's something there that, everybody knows probably is there, but I'm going to take it out anyway because it doesn't look good in a picture, and that's the turn line. I've already taken out most of it here, but the way you do that is I just use my airbrush, and like I say, brushing along with the grain of the cylinder, which is this direction, just slowly take it out. And always select the color that's closest to the area you're brushing here. You don't want to use this dark color here over here, or you'll end up with a big dark area through here. Now, as I said earlier, I don't like shadows, and as you can see here, there's a shadow. Now that's actually the natural shadow of the trigger, so it's completely acceptable that it's there. It's normal that it's there, but it doesn't look good in the picture, so I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm going to get in close and use my airbrush at first. And as you do it, you can back in and out and see how much more you need to do. So you'll need to do a lot there. And you can see here, though, it's got a lot of dark on it, so it's going to take quite a bit. I'm going to have to pretty much completely rebuild that area. And you can completely rebuild areas. I'm not going to get into that, but I just did a picture of a bolt-action rifle, and I had to completely rebuild the little ball on the lever. So you can rebuild areas if you want to, but it's more difficult. It's not just general basic stuff, but I'm going to stick to the basic stuff here today. And this is another one of those areas that once I have it, I will add the texture back. Sometimes to make it look better, you got to make it look worse first. And don't be afraid to do a thing more than once to get it to where it blends in. It's starting to look just right. I'll go ahead and fix this in just a little more, and then I should be done with this picture. Okay, one more thing I'm going to do here is just even up the finish on the hammer here. Like I say, we know it's parkerized. We know it's going to have variances in the color, but in a picture, it looks better for it to be more solid. Okay, now the last thing you want to do, once you get it all pretty much brushed the way you want it, is you want to zoom out and just kind of go around the gun and see if there's anything right near the gun that's going to make it look bad, like there's a bright spot there, bright spot there. I'll go through and brush those out. Just take them down a little bit so that when you pump up the contrast, there's not a glaring white dot right next to your subject. Now I'm going to leave some debris in here because it looks good in the background. It doesn't detract from the picture. I think it kind of adds to it. So you don't have to take everything out, just things that are going to detract from your subject. Now once you think you're done, zoom out. Like I said, go around it again, see if there's anything on the gun that you notice once it's zoomed out a little bit. And if there is, touch it up, and then you're pretty much done. The only thing you have to do now is add your watermark. Okay, now to add your watermark, I just open up my logo here, drag around it, copy it, and paste it into the other picture. Now usually when I put the logo in, I'll put it in down here, kind of shape it to where it looks like it's contouring with this line. But actually I think since I got a lot of empty space right here, I'm just going to stick it right here. So you just copy it in, adjust the size to where you want it, position it where you want it, and then make the layer transparent so that you only see the logo and not the stuff around it, which is why you need a PNG file. Now, it's not going to show up too much there, but I don't want it to show up too much. I want it to kind of blend in. Now, I will kind of shape it to where it makes it look like it's on that background. Like I'll shear it a little bit, maybe even give it a little bit of a distortion here. Make it look like it's closer to me on this side and farther away from me on that side. Just a little something to make it look like it's on the wall there, not just floating in the air. So there you have it. Now all I have to do that the picture is finished is just email it to myself, open it on my phone, upload to Instagram, use the Instagram features to adjust the color, contrast, etc. to where I think it looks good, give it a little bit of a dramatic effect, etc. So as you can see, a gun doesn't have to actually be new or be unfired to look like it's new and unfired in a picture. It just takes a little extra work. And the difference between the pictures on Instagram that look good and the ones that look great is just that some people take a little extra time with their pictures. So if you want to make your pictures look really good, you want to take a little extra step and maybe go to that next level, I hope this video has helped you out.